Welcome to the Women Who Code podcast. My name is Molly Devine. I'm the Development Events and Grant Manager with Women Who Code, and I'm very excited for today's guest, Yvette Edwards. Yvette Edwards leads the Public Sector Solutions Architect and Engineering team for the Americas Solutions Engineering portfolio at VMware. Leading this award-winning team and over 100 talented solution engineers and solution architects in support of the U.S. federal, state, and local governments and higher education. Yvette is transforming and increasing trust and customer experience across all agencies she serves, ensuring the EPIC 2 values execute passion, integrity, customer, and community are first and foremost. Yvette has over 25 years of sales engineering experience, is the high-tech software industry, and 18 years of those years in sales engineering. We're going to invite Yvette to speak, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Molly. Hello, how are you?
I'm great. So glad to have you on the podcast today. And I think we spoke a little earlier this week, and we were talking a bit about, sales engineering and just what a unique position within the tech sector this is, especially potentially for women in tech. And so I just love for you to share a little bit about how you first got involved in tech.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think it's very much like our audience, right? I went to college and studied computers in school, right? When probably in its infancy, to be honest, it was a long time ago. And so when I graduated from college, a week after graduation, I started as a software engineer writing code at AT&T. And I thought for sure that was going to be the rest of my career. I loved coding because I love problem solving, and there I went. And then about 5 years later, AT&T was kind of going through a transformation, and I noticed that we were doing a lot of offshore coding. I mean, we still had a lot of work on our team, but there was a lot of new projects that were going, and other people were kind of writing code for us. So then one of my girlfriends said, hey, maybe we should go to a job fair and just make sure that there's other jobs out there. So I wound up just going with her, kind of just on a whim. And as we were going around and just looking at jobs, I walked across AOL was hiring at the time, so that's how long ago it was. And those of you who probably don't know AOL.com, the kind of the first IM tool that was ever out there. But then I came across this company called Oracle, and they were hiring sales engineers. And so I just kind of, actually, I didn't even say sales engineer, I said sales consultant. So, I saw the job description. I just walked by, and then the gentleman walked out and he says, wait a minute, aren't you coming in to talk to us? And I was like, no, I don't do sales. I do engineering, And then he said, well, let me tell you about this career. So that's how I first learned about it. And they wound up recruiting me to be a sales engineer. And so Oracle was my first job. But the way he got me was, he said, you have so much personality, you sit in front of a computer and you code all day. And I said, yeah, that's great. I love it. He goes, but I can also think that there's a lot of other value you can provide. So I think that the reason that I'm so passionate about sales engineering, and when I talk about it at colleges, I think that we all know about different things you can do with a STEM education. Obviously, there's doctors, there's engineers, pilots, there's all these things, but sales engineering isn't something that you actually study in college, but it does use a lot of the different skills. So it kind of marries communication, curiosity, technology, all into one bucket. So and one of the things that I've noticed too, when I've talked to folks, because we have the National Society of Sales Engineers, and there's a couple of colleges that have clubs, and I've had a couple of students graduate and tell me, I'm so glad I found this career, because this young lady that I was talking to once, she said, I really just wanted to study journalism, and my mom said, no, you got to go in technology, you're going to that's the only way you're going to make money. So there she was in the technology career that she wasn't super passionate about, and then all of a sudden she found sales engineering, where she could tie her communication skills and her passion for curiosity with technology.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it really harkens back to another podcast that I actually was able to host, where one of the women was speaking about how she got into tech, and she worked in the cyber field, and she spoke to the fact that she learned coding, but she wanted to think about coding more as a learning a second language. So it'd be like picking up Spanish or picking up, French, where it really was a second language. It helped her get in the door of working in the tech space, but then she was able to kind of transition her career into an element that more fit her personality, which maybe was more project planning or project management and team building and things like that. But she needed that tech background, that coding background, to essentially get into that position to begin with.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because I think I haven't really explained what sales engineering is. So, technology companies that sell software or hardware or some type of technology, they hire sales engineers because, yes, you have a salesperson that's going to take care of, the actual sale, but then you have what we call a pre-sales technology portion, and that's what the sales engineer does. So they are a pre-sales resource that partners with sales, and yes, sales is in the name because at the end you're hoping that the customer finds value and buys whatever it is that company you represent, whether it's software. In my case, I've always been in the software field. So you're actually working with a customer to make sure that you understand, what their problem is, right? It'd be great if a customer woke up and said, "Hey, I just want to buy millions of dollars of software," but that's not how the world works, right? They have some type of problem or a business outcome they're trying to get. So your job is to make sure that you architect a solution that's going to solve their business problem, and make sure that you can also tie back that the solution they're purchasing is giving them some type of outcome that they're looking for.
And when you share a little about the role of sales and selling, what does that really look like in terms of the technology overall?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I really love about it, it's really just that consultative piece, right? So you're just sitting with a client and you are trying to understand, what it is that is plaguing the business, right? So, if one time we were working with Disney and they were having some issues with bees that, could sting a child. And if a child's allergic to bees, it could be very dangerous. So we wound up coming up with a solution, working with biotech engineers to make sure that, because it turns out that if there's a lot of sugar content in a trash can, bees start to circulate. So finding a sensor to put inside a garbage can so that when the sugar content's really high, that bag would get changed, it would have a sensor and it would, so trying to solve a problem like that doesn't necessarily think, okay, this is something we're going to buy software for. So it's kind of taking that step back and working with a client to help them solve a real world problem. And what's really exciting about this career is, depending on the customer, it could be, we solve problems in all fields, whether it's airlines, something like Disney. It could be obviously financials, making sure that they're not getting cyber hacked, or there's, privacy, healthcare, making sure that health information is online. So, when a surgeon is actually operating and actually using some type of technology, making sure that works. So I think it fits every single industry and every single technology and every single problem. So I think that's what's really exciting about the career. It's really dynamic.
I think that's really fascinating. I would never, obviously everyone's grown up, we all started obviously as kids, and I can think about those times being in the park and seeing, right, the bees swarming. And I would never think that there could be a technology solution to solve an issue like that. It's just, right, it's the nature of the beast, right? They're going to be bees. They're going to be attracted to the garbage can. You might get stung. But obviously, for someone that has allergies, or maybe a population that's got higher percentages of allergies, or even a higher percentage of bees, that is really important, because of course we want, we know that bees are very important to our
yes,
environment,
yeah.
but also we want to keep people safe that do have those challenges. And so that would be something that I would never think about being an opportunity, and then to kind of break that down and have these people in this role that are really solving for this issue and then connecting the technology to it. I think that's such a necessary piece. And I think sometimes, kind of to your point earlier, sometimes a piece that can be overlooked in our world. And so when we're thinking about women who are considering a career in tech, what do they need? What should they know, or what do they need to know about sales engineering, or what might draw them to that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason that people get into tech, whether it's coding or, building something or manufacturing something, because, we definitely have mechanical engineers who become sales engineers as well. I think it's just the fact that, tying into that innate skill and I guess passion. So for me, like I said, it was problem solving. I also have a curiosity and a thirst for knowledge. So I think if you have that, because truthfully, sales engineering, just like many careers, is very dynamic, and you constantly have to be learning, because obviously we have, new technology coming out. Now we have AI. Before it was digital transformation. Now we're into this, fourth industrial revolution of AI. So, you have to constantly be learning. So as long as you have a thirst for knowledge and a lot of curiosity, because you do want to get to know your customer. One of the big things you need to do here is get a PhD on your customer versus, hey, I have this certification or that certification. That's awesome. That's great, because that means that's the other end of it. You can help them solve a problem, but you also have to get to know your customer, because again, when we are working in a pre-sales situation, we're not just coming with the elevator pitch, and we're not just thinking about me. It's all about that customer. So I think if you're a person that thrives in a dynamic environment, you love building things, problem solving, and you have a curiosity and a thirst for knowledge, those are things that, those passions could align great to this career.
That's awesome. I think, so obviously at Women Who Code, we have a large percentage of women that are maybe technologists, or, they're completing their degree, they're finishing a boot camp, things like that. But we also have a lot of women who maybe are thinking about a career change or swapping, but maybe don't have a background in technology. So what role does having, that base, or that technology base, have in securing a job in sales engineering? Could someone that's maybe a sales professional, in just kind of that average sales capacity, transition into a career in sales engineering?
Yeah, it's definitely been done before. We've definitely had folks on the sales side come over to our side here in sales engineering. So definitely, if you're currently working for a software company and you already understand the technology, and you are that type of person that was super curious and actually learned more about the technology, then that's an easy transition. Also, one of the best hires that I usually do are customers, so people that use our technology, and they can be in any capacity. They could, be using it for completely different purposes. We have HR people, because we also have, mobile technology that really kind of helps you onboard your employees day one. So, that type of HR professional would be great to sell, like, our mobile software. So I would say that this career really lends itself to kind of a second career, which it was for me. At the end of the day, I was a software engineer, still early in my 20s. I'd only been doing it for 5 years, but I would definitely say, had I started straight into sales engineering, which can be done, we do have academy programs and things like that. I think it really helped me that I had been out in the field, for 5 years, and working, truly using software and understanding what it's like to be an end user. So I think this career really lends itself to a second career. I have worked with the Pre-Sales Collective, where we kind of did a series where we were trying to educate people on how to learn more about this career. And so, we actually reached out to math teachers that were kind of looking for a second career, right? So I think as long as you have a proclivity for some type of technology, and again, it can go across many industries. I'm representing the software industry, but it could be mechanical, it could be manufacturing, it could be anything. And if you have a proclivity for understanding that technology, and it's really just communication and explaining it to someone, because these types of purchases are very complicated. And so a customer needs to know before they actually purchase something, is it going to work in their environment? Is it going to solve their problem? So sometimes sales engineers are involved in what we call proof of concepts. So you truly, help install the software or whatever the technology is, and kind of walk the customer through it, in a very test scenario, so that they can see, everything you say it does, it actually does it. So
I think that's a great piece, kind of that not just that communication piece, but a little bit of that practical application when all is said and done. One thing that you shared about is that you helped launch this National Society of Sales Engineers. Can you tell me a little bit about the National Society of Sales Engineers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got involved here locally, University of Central Florida, that's close to my house, and I actually now have a senior there. So, but back in then, I didn't have any kids at the school, and I was doing a lot of I was talking about STEM careers for women. It was doing a lot of work there and representing them on Female STEM Night. And then one of the professors came up to me and said, "Hey, we would really love you to get involved more in curriculum." And so then we wound up talking a little bit, and I wound up guest lecturing and sort of just sharing about this career during a couple of those classes for this professor. And then it turns out that they actually had a Society of Sales Engineers. at the college. And so I started getting involved with them. And then it was kind of in its infancy at that point, and they were having a competition, but there was only 4 schools involved. It was Cal Poly, Iowa State, University of Central Florida. And so they were kind of competing and sort of like engaging with each other. So then, myself and a couple of the college students who had started the different clubs, we decided to co-found the National Society of Sales Engineers, because we thought it'd be even greater if we could involve more colleges and kind of take this career to that level. And so NSSE continues today, and they still have a competition. And Gary Williams now is kind of running it. And I think they recently had one in NC State this year, a competition there, but I wasn't able to attend. But so it's just a matter of getting colleges to have sort of a club, at their school where they get to actually like learn how to do presentations, how to do role plays. They'll have people from industry come in and actually, do a real world business case with them. And, so they can kind of practice doing this career so that, when they get out of school, they can actually look for jobs. And we've also done a lot of recruiting. We'll usually do a match at the national competition every year. So it's a good way for students to find a job, learn about the career, try it out. And, we usually do a weekend where we do a real live role play, and we'll bring folks from industry, and somebody will play the CEO, and somebody will play the really tough, procurement officer, that's always saying no. So it just gives them the whole gamut of what this career feels like.
I think that's a really important piece. I know when we met earlier this week, one of the things we talked about was, oftentimes we're going through the education process, right? And we're in middle school, we're in high school, and they have us taking these educational proficiency tests or these personality tests. And it might say like, you like dogs. I know that was something I brought up, right? You like animals, like you should be a vet. But then when I break it down, it's like, well, I do love animals. And so seeing an animal suffering or in pain, well, of course I want to fix that, mentally and physically. Like that's just not a career that I could do and still, function throughout my day. And so, oftentimes these things just point to the area of most specific interest instead of pointing us in the directions that might be more creative. And I think that having a society like you're talking about that kind of exposes to a career that maybe people don't know about, because I'll be honest, before, I met you and learned about this upcoming podcast, I didn't know what a sales engineer was. I didn't know that sales engineering was a field that someone could go into. I was like, well, if they're selling product, it's probably just right. The sales associate doing their thing and then passing it over to the technologist or whoever it might be, the engineer on staff. And so can you speak a little to that and just on how, what maybe types of skill sets or things might pop up in, a personality test like that might say, oh, you're empathetic or you're communicative, or, that might point to like, oh yeah, be a nurse or be a lawyer, but might actually lend really well into a career like this, that someone, a student specifically might think about, oh, well, this told me to do this, so obviously I have to be pigeonholed into being a teacher today. But actually it could be a really great avenue to move into a career like this.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think that, you and I talked offline that, my 2 youngest daughters, even the one that's here at UCF now, and she's actually in marketing and in business. But, for her, it was always empathy. And, it was always like, you're going to be a nurse or a psychologist. So I would definitely say empathy is great, because you do have to kind of put yourself in your customer's shoes, as I said recently, and getting that PhD. I'd say good listening skills. Obviously, the technical, whether it's math or science or, those are always really good. But I would say also a really good one is curiosity. I know I've mentioned that several times. If there is something, I know that now we do look at a growth mindset. We do kind of, I don't know if that is one that comes up anymore, but a growth mindset or something where you are willing to learn. And if you're a fast learner, I think that's important too, because you kind of do have to think on your feet. Communication skills is really important as far as, presentations. And I guess none of us are great presenters, even as we sit on this podcast, right? So something we probably always try to perfect, but it's always good. And I think that communication is really, really important, because we do have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So it's the listening portion. And I think all of us probably took that communications class in college where, they talk about what truly communication is. And it isn't just thinking about while the other person's talking what you're going to say, because then you're not really listening to that person. So it is all of that and taking that all in. So I would think that every skill that you get on that test can make you a great sales engineer.
In terms of when those college students or even like a career transitioner or someone that's popping back into a career after career break, I think we've got a lot of those people that do tune into this podcast, whether they be just graduating or just looking to get back in after maybe taking time for family or caregiving and things like that, or even like I said, making that career transition. What would be a specific skill set that they would want to make sure that they kind of honed in on to prepare them, whether or not they're coming from a tech background or not? What might be something that's like, this would be great to have on your resume? Like if you want to get into a field, whether it be sales engineering specifically or tech in general, what might be something that you're like, you definitely want to have this on your resume, or at least be showing that you're building towards it?
Yeah, I would think some type of architecture or solutioning, and maybe just some success stories of some ways you've helped a customer before. Also, if you do have interaction with a customer, that would be really helpful. I'm not saying you can't be a behind the scenes person, but if you have had any type of interaction in that way, or you've represented your company in some way, it could even be something like a Toastmasters class that maybe you held that, or maybe you held some type of position, like even HOA, just kind of showing that you have that leadership and that presentation and that executive presence. I think that would be those would be skills beyond your current skills that could help help somebody see that potential.
Do you have advice for anyone who might be interested in sales engineering and how they might get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a National Society of Sales Engineer that is really good. There's also another company called Pre-Sales Collective, and they are sort of doing pretty much what I talked about. They really are helping folks find this career. They have webinars all the time, so I would kind of Google those too. I think that even Pre-Sales Collective themselves has some classes that you can join to maybe learn a little bit more about it if you are a career changer. If you are in a college, I would suggest really looking at the National Society of Sales Engineers. They will help you start a Society of Sales Engineers club at your college, and then reach out to professionals like us that out on LinkedIn, make contacts, and reach out to them, see if they'll come to your school and present. I know I'm glad to, so anybody within the Florida region can reach out to me, or if I'm traveling, I'm glad to do that as well. So those would be my suggestions.
I know when you said you started the career in sales engineering, you were working for Oracle, and now you're working at VMware.
Yeah.
And I thought your VMware position was really interesting to me, because I was reading about how you support the U.S. federal, state, and local government and higher education, and it feels like very niche. So can you talk about kind of those niche markets in tech in general, and how they can really be tailored to your specific interests, and what really drew you maybe to the government and education side of things within tech?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is my current role today, and I will say, I love this set of customers. Very, very passionate about them, and the mission statement that our team has is, our mission is to make sure that our customers complete their mission successfully. So we know they're out there defending our country, educating our students, kind of our future workers of the world, and making sure that our cities are protected and safe. So that is really what I love about the set of customers. There's just so many different things. So I've supported all set of customers. I mentioned Disney, I've done airlines, cruise lines, so that all brings interesting things as well. But I'm really passionate about our current set right now. So I think not only should you find a company that's a great match for you, has a good culture, has a place where you can learn and grow, you should also think about what industry you want to support. Of course, I'm highly passionate. As I said, I'm a lifelong learner. My dad always said that education was the most important thing in the world, because if you had a great education, you could do anything you wanted in the world. And I truly believe that's true. So I'm really glad that we support higher ed, all the universities that we talked about and that I partner with.
I feel like that really resonates with me in particular, because I had a very similar upbringing. Both my parents were educators, and they spoke a lot about how important education is and how it can really bring you places. And I always make jokes that I knew I didn't want to get into teaching because I'd seen my parents do it, but I found myself working in positions that were education adjacent in some ways. They were instilling that leadership, that entrepreneurship, that empowerment, but maybe in a different way. And one of the things that I speak to a lot in talking about careers, and especially in talking to younger people, maybe high school students or college students, is it's so much easier to go to work every day when it's something that you're passionate about and that you're excited about and that that's making an impact. And when I think about even some of the things you already talked about, even referring back to that, like bees in the park, right? It's making that measurable impact. And if you are an environmentalist, that could be something that really suits you in terms of environment. So I think sometimes people think, well, it's corporate, it's a job, they're going to be focused just on the bottom line and things like that. But there really are those fields that you can get into, and then those subsects of those fields where you can actually make an impact. So my first thought, if I was just thinking tech, right, wouldn't be, wow, I'm going to change the world. But really, there is such a great opportunity to change the world. And Women Who Code hosts a hackathon for social good, and that is really the basis of that hackathon for social good, is right, finding those impacts that are technology in nature that are there to change the world. And so that really, like I said, resonated with me, that ability, like, oh, I love that we're supporting education. I love that we're supporting, maybe those heroes that are away and, coming back into our community. And so I think it's great that you point that out, because I think so often we lose sight of that sometimes in the corporate field, that there is that great impact you can be making.
That's a really great point, Molly. And we also support nonprofits, right? So if you're really passionate about that, that could definitely be, where you go work. Maybe you go work for a nonprofit, right? And be a sales engineer for them and actually help them, solve real world problems. So I think that's great.
Yeah, it's really great to hear. How could people, find out more about these positions, or how can they even find them if they start, career searching? What might be some keywords? Is it going to say sales engineer in the title, or might there be some keywords that they would want to look for to identify?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this career has a lot of names. Like I said, that very first one at Oracle was sales consultant. So, I would search for sales engineer, solution engineer, sales consultant. There's also solution architect. Some folks use that word as well, but I think all of those terms. But if you start with sales engineering, I think you'll get a pretty good net. And I think the AI is smart enough now to translate solution engineers into sales engineers as well. And so I do want to say something before we go, because I think there's probably some questions out there. We haven't really talked about the compensation portion of sales engineering. So why is this career such a great find? And when I talk to kids and they say, wow, this is great, I'm so glad I did this. This career can be very lucrative. So we definitely talked a lot about the engineering part of it, which is what I'm really passionate about. But there is a sales side to it. So there is a variable to this career. On most of these careers, you have what we call an OTE. So you have like a base salary, and then there's some commission. Now you don't get as much commission as the sales person does, because they might be on a more aggressive commission plan, but there is commission. There are bonuses. So this can be a very lucrative career. It can be very rewarding, both personally and financially. And I remember my old boss said, her husband had just gotten out of medical school. He's like, wait a minute, your sales engineers make how much? Why did I go to medical school? So just know that there is another bonus to this career. It is lucrative compared to a coder, because that's a good salary too. But we kind of have a baseline, and then you may have like a yearly bonus, but we're talking about commission as well.
It's so funny. But one of the things that you said when you're like, you make how much? It reminded me. And obviously all careers are important, and all careers are great, and if it's your passion. But I used to work with a volunteer, and she was a teacher, a kindergarten teacher, and she would talk about her, hearing her husband once COVID was going on, because they were having meetings at home, and she would hear him on a call with like an entry level person, and she'd be like, they're making what? It's my career. So it's interesting to say that. And I'm glad that you brought up the, the compensation side. And one of the things that I'd love to know about too, just for someone preparing again for this position, they've applied, they're excited about it. What might they look forward to, or want to be prepared for in the interview process? Like, what might that look like?
Yeah, so I would definitely say the one thing that you have to do if you are applying for a technology company, spend time on their website. If they sort of have some type of end user conference, for us, we call it VMware Explore, used to be called VMworld, go out and find old videos and actually learn about their technology. So I think that, they're really going to want to know why you're choosing their company, why you want to sell their technology. So make sure that you're educated enough about their technology, number one. Number two, do some research on the industry. So maybe you're coming from that industry and that's why you're excited. So that could be quite much value. So if you are a customer of that company, then that would be a really good value. And then just kind of talk about how you use their technology. So I would be prepared to, obviously there's a behavioral side of it, which we're all prepared for, but I would definitely be able to find a way to translate my current skills into what a sales engineer would do. So find out of other ways where you've had to sell a solution. Maybe you've sort of pitched a solution to your boss. So maybe currently today, there was a problem and you solved it and you actually had to go to senior leadership, or you had to go in front of a board of directors and sort of pitch that sale, so to speak. Because I think if we really think about it, we're all selling every day. So whether you are an engineer at NASA and you're trying to, tell them why they should use this new rocket piece, on the rocket, and you're collaborating with other teams, and that brings me to collaboration. So collaboration is huge in this career. So you're definitely working with a sales counterpart. You might be working with other specialists. You're working with a customer and all of their different silos that they have. So you have to make sure that you know how to collaborate between teams, which goes back to that communications piece. And then one thing I'll say, and we've talked about this a lot, is that if you do love to teach, or you did have a proclivity to teach, this career, you're doing a lot of teaching. You're teaching yourself. You're teaching yourself new technology. You're teaching customers about your technology. You're constantly sort of explaining, maybe coming back to your team and explaining, what the customer's situation is. So it is a constant teaching and learning experience all around.
I think one of the most important things you said in that piece was we all sell every day. And I think that's something people forget. And, personally working in a career that's sales oriented, I often see that people are very afraid of that word, right? They're like, I can't sell that. I can't ask someone for money, or I can't ask for that payment, or whatever it might be. And I think there's a lot of fear base in that idea of like, quote unquote, selling, right? And so I think it's important that you say that, because we often forget that we're kind of selling things on a regular basis. And sometimes it's so minor, right? Where we're going to dinner, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you really want, Chinese food, but your partner really wants Mexican food for dinner. And so you have to kind of convince them, right? You have to make that pitch and build on why actually going to get Chinese would be even better, right? For that night, or picking a movie, or so it can be such minor things. Yeah, of course it can be a big thing, like selling your boss on why you should be switching to this platform instead of that platform.
Yeah.
But it can be so minor too, and we're doing those things every day. And so we already have that comfort level, kind of innately nature in our systems. And so when you look at something and you think, well, sales, like I would think that maybe some people would see, this talk or hear this talk and be like, sales, like, no way, that's not for me. I can't imagine selling someone or trying to get someone on board with something, or commission. That sounds so scary. How can that be part of my job? But it's really, you're using those skill sets every single day. And so I think that's so important that you kind of highlight that, because I think it's something that we often forget about. And so sales can seem very scary or very daunting.
Yeah, it's actually tapping into your inner 5-year-old self. So, who are the best sellers? Your 5-year-old, right? They'll convince you why they have to have that cookie before dinner. And, one thing that we do in the Society of Sales Engineers is we do objection therapy, because of course, I think the reason we're afraid to ask, and I always tell my kids, if you don't ask, the answer's already no, right? So what are you going to lose by asking, right? And so we make them go for a week, and we just tell them to, try to negotiate things, right? And ask for things. Now, all legal and all above board, of course, but, they'll do things like ask at Starbucks for, an extra cup of coffee, or, just certain things, right? And so they'll come back, and every time they report back, they're like, well, I really tried hard, but nobody said no. I got everything I asked for. And so it's kind of interesting, right? But yeah, it's truly just, that is really why we're so scared, because we're afraid of getting rejected. But we all know, and we've all listened to the podcast, that you don't grow with success, you grow with failure. So
Absolutely. I think even when you said that and you started saying, "Oh, we have people go out and like ask for things," I'm like, "Ooh," that like gave me a little nervousness. Like I can't imagine asking my barista for an extra cup of coffee. Like no, yes. But it is that quote, right? Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly.
So why throw it out? You know, the worst they can say is no. And what does that do? Nothing.
Yeah.
No, how does that hurt you? It doesn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So last thing I just want to talk about is, do you have one go-to career tip? And it could be anything, doesn't have to be based around sales engineering, but just in your life, what has really helped you succeed and grow in your career?
Yeah, so I truly believe in a growth mindset. I think that you kind of said, okay, now you're doing public sector because that's something I hadn't done before, right? So I think that when you're lucky enough to find a career you're passionate about and you're doing really well, there's going to get a point where you just feel really comfy, and you feel like, oh yeah, I can definitely phone it in, so to speak. Not that we would ever do that. Not no woman who codes member would do that, but when you start feeling a little comfortable and somebody taps you on the shoulder, as they've done to me, and asked you to take on like a new challenge or a new skill, just say yes, because I have every time, and it's helped me grow and it's helped me kind of expand who I am. And at the end of the day, I just always want to make sure that I'm making an impact. I do believe in exactly what you were talking about, Molly. I believe in tech for good. So if there's a place that has a need and I feel that I can be a match to fulfill that need, then that's something that I do. So I think there's many times in our careers or even early in our careers where we're like really, really, really scared and we're like, oh my gosh, I couldn't do that. That sounds so scary. To me, I'm saying maybe that's a sign you should do it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a book, and I want to say it's by Chandra Rhimes, and I might get the title wrong, but I think it's titled "The Year of Yes." And she specifically talks to what you're saying. Just say yes to those things, like say yes to those challenges. What might be scary, what might be uncomfortable or out of our comfort zone. And I had a coach growing up, or I guess in college, really, and her big piece, she had right outside her office was where the magic happens in your comfort zone. So, you could be in that comfort zone, but outside of it, that's where the magic happens, and that's where you want to be. And so I just want to say, thank you so much, Yvette, for coming on our podcast, the Women Who Code podcast, and sharing your experience in sales engineering, really breaking down what it means and what it entails, and really giving that information and experience and wealth of knowledge to our community.
My pleasure, Molly. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you, and thanks so much for featuring sales engineering on this podcast. I really appreciate it.